Welcome back to the channel, guys. My name is Steve.
I'm Lindsay.
Today we're going to be reacting to how do UK elections work. This will actually be the first time that I've ever looked into UK elections or really anything to do with the political system in this way.
I'm surprised.
This is something I'm actually excited about. I've been wanting to learn about how the elections work for quite some time now.
Isn't there an election coming up?
Yes, I just found that out. I don't know, it was recently that you guys are actually having an election on July 4th, which is kind of an interesting date. I don't think you guys always have your election on the same day, from what I understand. We don't either.
Well, we don't. It's the same time.
Yeah.
But the date changes.
Yeah, it just changes slightly. But but I believe theirs changes quite a bit. I don't know how this works. If they don't touch on that, let us know in the comments, guys, how that works. But from what I understand, it's like you guys might have an election in the winter sometimes, and then other times it might be in the summer.
What?
Supposedly.
It varies that much?
Don't have any idea what to expect here. You ready to get started?
Yeah.
All right. But guys, just to mention before we get started, this video is about 4 years old. I think it was made right before the previous election. And so, you know, I have no idea. Some of the politicians they talk about might be a little outdated, but nonetheless, I'm sure we're going to get a lot out of this video anyway.
Right, the general gist.
That's what I want. The general gist. The politicians always come and go, but the general gist should be the same. So let's go ahead and check out how do UK elections work.
Britain is heading to the ballot box for its first December election in almost a century. It could decide both the fate of the UK's departure from the European Union and the future of the world's fifth largest economy. So how does Britain's voting system work?
Hold on one second, guys. I just want to touch base on something real quick. He brought up 2 points that I'm curious about. I thought Brexit was more than 4 years ago. I thought that was like 8 years ago. That was like two election cycles ago.
A long time ago.
It does. That's surprising to me. And the other thing is, so like we were just bringing up in the intro that how I had heard that they could have elections at any time.
Right.
And that's obviously the case. They're having a December election the last time, and now they're having a July election.
Yeah, that's crazy.
How does that work? Hopefully we'll go into that a little bit here.
In a general election, the UK is divided into 650 local areas called parliamentary constituencies, each of which is represented by one member of parliament, or MP, in the House of Commons. Constituencies vary in size geographically, but typically each will have between 60,000 and 80,000 voters.
By the way, did you see how tiny that was? Hold on, guys. Sorry, I wanted to look at that real quick. You see how tiny what do they call these? Not districts. Oh, guys, what do they call these? Hold on. I want to go back because I want to know what they exactly called these.
The UK is divided into 650 local areas,
parliamentary
constituencies, each of which is represented by one member of parliament, or MP, in the House of Commons. Constituencies vary in size geographically, but typically each will have between 60,000 and 80,000 voters.
Wow.
All British citizens resident in the country
generally same
and
here.
aged 18 years old or over on December the 12th will be able to cast their ballot, with some 46 million people reportedly registered to vote.
46 million out of the population of the country is pretty large, honestly. Did they say it was automatic? I didn't hear if they said it was automatic.
They said it was automatic.
I don't think it was automatic either. Or they didn't say.
You have to register.
Yeah.
Voters choose one person from a list of candidates to represent their local area, and the candidate that receives the most votes wins. All of the elected MPs then enter Parliament to sit in the House of Commons and represent the people in their constituency. The political party that secures the most MPs is then invited by the Queen to form a government. An absolute majority in Parliament is 326 seats, although the number for a working majority is slightly lower in practice. That's because lawmakers elected for Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland actively abstain from taking up their seats in Westminster, since the party rejects Britain's claim to sovereignty over Ireland. So, for example, in the 2017 election, 7 Sinn Féin MPs were elected. This effectively lowered the threshold for a majority to 322. If there's a clear result...
Hold on, did you see that right there?
Which part?
Conservative, Labour, SNP, Liberal Democrats, and Green Party.
If there's a clear result, when polls close at 10 p.m. on election day, we can expect to see opposition leaders conceding to the winner. However, if recent history is to repeat itself and no party secures a majority, the election could bring about another hung parliament. In June 2017, a shock exit poll showed Theresa May's ruling Conservative Party had failed to return a parliamentary majority.
This is completely catastrophic for the Conservatives.
Hold on. Conservatives, Labor, LD. Was that the Liberal Democrats? That's okay. So it's the Conservatives and the Labor Party are the two big parties.
Okay, but my question is their Conservative Party more like our Liberal Party, like Democrat?
Well, their Conservative Party, I believe, would be closer to the Republican Party, and I believe
Really?
Yeah, I believe the Labor Party is more like the Democrat Party in some way. I'm sure there are differences.
So the colors are switched because here,
Oh, I get what you're saying.
blue is more indicative of the Democrat Party,
Right,
and red is more Republican conservative.
right.
And for Theresa May.
It forced the Prime Minister to strike a deal with the Northern Irish Democratic Unionist Party, or DUP, in order to secure a working majority in the House of Commons. If there is no clear winner this time around, parties could look to create a formal alliance together. That way, they could bolster their chances of securing enough votes to pass laws in Parliament. Could try to secure a formal coalition arrangement, which is what happened in 2010 between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats.
I believe the guy on the right is David Cameron, if I'm not mistaken. I know the name, and I believe that's him. I don't know if he was the Tories or the Labor Party. And then there was Theresa May, I guess, after that, And then there was Boris Johnson. And then there was, I remember there was some woman who lasted like, I don't know, a month or something. It was like a very short period of time. I'm sure the people, you guys, if you're in the UK, you obviously know who I'm talking about as a prime minister.
And work together in the national interest.
If Johnson is unable to form a government, he could resign and recommend the leader of the largest opposition party be given a chance to form the executive. As is typical with major national parties in campaign mode ahead of the general election, they have all suggested they would not be willing to work together to form a government. Most countries around the world use proportional voting systems, meaning that a party that wins half of the total vote share also wins half of the seats in Parliament. But not in the UK. The voting system used in Westminster is known as first past the post. A term used in horse racing, it signifies that the contest is effectively over once a candidate receives the largest number of votes for their local area. Essentially, it's winner takes all. The same voting system is used in Canada and India, as well as many Caribbean and African states. Advocates of first past the post say it is a simple and familiar process which usually delivers a one-party government. It allows that party to implement their plans over the duration of the parliament. First past the post certainly has its critics, with many quick to point out that the winning MP usually receives less than half of the vote. In most constituencies, the majority of people actually end up voting against the winning candidate rather than for them.
Wait,
MPs
what?
are sometimes elected on a vote share as low as 35%.
Really?
How does that even work?
That's what I have no idea. That's interesting. So it's just the person who gets the most out of a bunch of candidates, right? That's interesting.
But I don't understand. My brain doesn't grasp this, because if they got the most votes, then how did they not get over half the votes?
Because I'm thinking there's like, look at this. There's, in this example, there's 5 candidates running. So obviously,
Because it's split so much between.
obviously there's no way for, unless one candidate was obviously so loved that he got over 50%. But if you look at it with 5 candidates running, it's very unlikely you're going to have someone get over 50%, because that means the other 4 would be splitting the other 50%.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
Leaving the losing parties with 65% of the vote.
That's
the winning party
insane.
is also usually elected by less than half of the electorate. In fact, of the 21 general elections between 1935 and 2017, the majority of voters only voted for parties that formed the government on 2 separate occasions. Smaller parties often hit out at the first-past-the-post voting system too, arguing they do not gain fair representation. In 2015, the UK Independence Party, led at the time by Brexit proponent Nigel Farage, received 12.6% of the vote, but this only returned one MP. It's also argued that the first-past-the-post voting system encourages what's known as tactical voting. Take so-called safe seats. If you're a voter that lives in a constituency that usually returns a Labour MP, for example, you may feel there is little point in backing a Conservative candidate because they are unlikely to be elected. When this happens, and it happens a lot, voters may choose to vote against a candidate they dislike rather than for one they prefer. Or they might not vote at all. Around 2/3 of constituencies in the UK are considered safe seats. In 2011,
I would say that's pretty consistent here too.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds very similar to how it is a lot of places here.
But here, you've only got the two candidates running. I mean, in the main two parties. It sounds like you guys might have an issue with the smaller parties not having as much representation, same as here, but they at least have the ability to win some.
Right.
Here, a third party generally has no chance, unfortunately. I like the idea of having another choice besides the two main parties. I mean, generally speaking, both the Republicans and Democrats, especially on a national level, are they're basically two wings of the same bird in a lot of cases. They have some differences, but in terms of actually not selling out the American people, it's very unusual to find candidates in the Republican or Democrat parties that don't sell out the American people in one way or another. Most of them get bought and paid for by corporate interest once they get into office, even if they didn't mean to, go that route when they got in or when they were running for election. They always seem to become compromised when they get in. And it's just a shame that, I don't know how you guys feel in the UK, but here in the US, it feels so disappointing that you always know that, none of these third parties are going to be elected on a national level.
It feels pretty hopeless. Honestly.
It does.
They can't even be in the debate. I'm wondering, do you guys have televised debates for all of your
I don't know. I wonder if they do too.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting to watch.
the British public was given a chance to change Westminster's voting system with the alternative vote referendum, but the electorate overwhelmingly rejected this option. The vote on December 12th is much more likely to usher in a government led by either the Conservative Party's Boris Johnson or the Labour Party's Jeremy Corbyn. The incumbent has sought to frame the vote as a Brexit election.
We're going to get Brexit done.
With each of the major national parties offering markedly different visions of how best to resolve the UK's long-running constitutional crisis. Johnson, who had promised to deliver Brexit by October 31st, come what may, do or die, demanded a general election after Parliament frustrated his attempts to ratify his last-minute divorce deal with the EU. As the leader of the centre-right Conservatives, Johnson said that if his party wins, he will get lawmakers to ratify his Brexit divorce deal before the end of January. By comparison, Corbyn's Labour Party has indicated they would need slightly longer to resolve Brexit. The centre-left opposition has said it will negotiate a new withdrawal agreement with the bloc within 6 months of the election. Labour would then seek to hold a national referendum on whether to leave on the terms it has agreed, which it says will mean maintaining very close ties between Britain and the EU, or to remain. Corbyn, the veteran socialist leader of Labour, has said he will stay neutral in such a referendum.
We can't go on forever being divided by how people voted in 2016.
So wait, maybe Brexit had already happened at this point, and what they're talking about is 4 years ago.
Finish.
Yeah, like, because I know there was some trouble like getting that going or something. I don't know a lot about it, but I've only looked into that a little bit. But maybe it's not actually Brexit they just voted on, and 4 years ago. Maybe it really was a while before that, and maybe they're talking about the implementation of it or something.
He's argued it's right to try to appeal to both the 52% of people who voted Brexit and the 48% of people that voted to remain. Meanwhile, the pro-EU Liberal Democrats are trying to woo voters away from bigger parties by promising to scrap Brexit altogether. Joe Swinson, the leader of the centrist party, has said the fast-approaching vote is a moment for seismic change. Almost all politicians were in agreement that a pre-Christmas election was necessary to try to break a cycle of inaction over Brexit. And major parties are now scrambling to attract weary voters in a bid to end years of political crisis. Thanks for
Okay, guys, I must say that your political system, based off of what we just learned, seems quite a bit more complicated than ours does on the
Definitely.
surface.
Yeah.
It could just be that, just learning this, it seems more complex, and it
Something
probably
you're used
is.
to or not used to, yeah.
Yeah, but what do you think about this?
I mean, from what I absorbed here, like you said, it seems more complicated.
Yeah.
And I don't like the fact that there are so many candidates to choose from, because then the person who gets elected based on this voting system isn't really representative of the people as a whole.
Here it's always just the Republicans, Democrats, like 95+% of the time, it's the Republican and Democrats. You do get some third parties that may get elected on a very local level, but that's even rare.
Yeah.
It's just unfortunate. In the Republican and Democrat Party here, you get people that stay in there for 50 years.
Yeah, that's
And, they're like nearly 100 years old when they're leaving. And it's
definitely need term limits.
yeah, you definitely need term limits, because the shorter that you're in, the shorter you're allowed to be in, the less likely you are to be corrupted. We definitely need an overhaul on our political system. And I don't know what you guys think about your political system. I'm sure it's the same as here. Some people love it, some people hate it, but
Yeah.
this was interesting, guys. I'd like to learn more about this. I'd like to dive into some of the parties. I think I understand generally that, there's conservatives. Then there's the Labor Party, which sounds sort of like our Democrats. Then there's a party called the
Liberal
Democrats. And I don't know if that means they are to the left of the Labor Party or something. And then there's obviously a number of
Green Party.
Green
and some,
Party.
Independent or something.
We have Green Party here as well. That's one of the more major third parties, I guess you could say. There's the Libertarian Party. I'm curious, who would the Libertarians be in the UK, if anybody knows? I bet there's some really interesting minor parties that aren't very represented there, and it'd be kind of interesting to see what those people are about.
Let us know in the comments how you feel about the past the post voting system. Do you like that system? Do you think it's the fairest way to do it? Or would you prefer a different kind of voting system?
Yeah. Tell us how you feel about your current political system.
Keep it friendly.
Yes, please, guys.
Be respectful of differing opinions.
It's just political beliefs. And that's something I'd like to say real quick, is that people get really angry when someone disagrees with them politically. And it's interesting to think about.
It used to not be like that.
Right. Yes. It used to, I remember even when I was in my teens and my 20s, it seems like until the last 10 or 15 years in the US at least, people could disagree on things, and they could
still be friendly with each other, still have fun together.
Yes.
But just know that they don't agree on that topic.
Right.
And for some reason, it's just become so divisive, so
polarizing.
Polarizing. And it's
so divisive, so vicious.
It's exhausting, honestly.
It really is. I was almost going to start a political channel at one point, but I was like, man,
I think you would be good at it, because you're a very unbiased person. As unbiased as a human being can be, I feel.
And by unbiased, you don't mean that I don't have my beliefs. It means that I can.
You don't allow those to dictate what's true and what's not.
Right. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, because you know what? I'm not going to box myself into this label.
Yeah, I think that's where the problem comes in, is putting yourself in a box in any area of life, because then you have these parameters that you have to abide by. Right. And if something else makes sense, well, then you feel threatened and you can't get out of the box because, but that's not who I am.
I personally wish we didn't have parties. I personally wish we'd see a candidate and they're like, this is what I believe in. And I'm like, oh, cool. I like what you believe, majority.
That would be such a cool voting system, is to have a political candidate's party not known. The party is nothing.
Yeah.
And you just have to vote on what they say they're going to do, what they say their policies are.
Absolutely.
And I think that would make it so much more, because so many people, like you said, put themselves in a box, identify as Democrat, Republican, whatever, and then they can't get out of it.
That was a little bit of a rant there, I guess, a little bit of a tangent, but anyways, guys, enough from us today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow us on our journey to discover everything there is to know about the UK and Ireland. Until next time, guys, peace.
Bye.